Hello and welcome to today's episode here at the Pilgrim's Well. We're looking at our series Practical Wisdom. Today we're going to deal with the topic of confrontation. Ben, the question is, how are Christians supposed to conduct themselves during confrontation?
Yes. Important topic today. Confrontation is biblical, so we have that understanding. Galatians 2, we see Paul speaking about how he confronted Peter to his face, and he did so publicly for what Peter was doing with the Jewish dietary laws and with the Gentiles. So confrontation is necessary, and I feel that today in our culture, we are very non-confrontational. A lot of things go unchallenged, if you want to use that word, or unspoken about, where things need to be dealt with one-on-one with people or in a group setting. If you go back maybe 100 years ago, I think maybe we were too confrontational in our culture here in the United States. But today, we are not confrontational enough. But there is a biblical way of confronting somebody where we're speaking to the individual, we're highlighting the issue at hand, and we're properly conducting ourselves as we go through it. So there's kind of a 6-step approach. If you want to look at it like this, I've broken it down into 6 steps. But like I said, I think it's easy today for us to avoid conflict. We want to set aside the problems for the sake of peace. We don't want there to be tension. So there's a lot of reasons why we justify why we don't confront when we should. But long-term problems will always end up creating more problems down the road. So we have to, at times, deal with an issue that might cause temporary tension, but in the long run, bring healing. So the first step is understanding, the understanding phase. When we run into problems and we run into conflict, we have to fully understand exactly what the problem is. So we want to know the whole story. So there's a saying, there's 3 sides to the truth. There's one person's account, there's the other person's account, and then there's what actually took place, what actually happened. So we have to get down to that as much as we can. We have to investigate, we have to ask questions, we have to be thorough, we have to have all the information on the table. Because if you make a decision and then later on you find out something else that was very important that you didn't have in the equation, it can mess everything up. So understanding exactly what the problem is, so we have all the information in front of us. And the second phase then would be the purpose phase. Why? Why are we confronting? The purpose, is it to correct the problem? Is it to be seen by others? Is it to manipulate? So we have to ask ourselves, why am I actually going to step in? And why am I going to confront what is going on? What's the motivation behind it? Now, third is the wisdom phase, in a sense where we fully understand and articulate the arguments and the counter arguments. Now, I'm not saying this so we walk in and we can win the debate no matter what they say, we counter. But what I'm saying is thoroughly think through everything that took place, the motivation, why, the possibilities. If this is the case, then why this? Or if that is the case, then why this? Think through it from every angle so you can flush out any motivation or any intention that may not be on the surface, that people could be like, oh yes, I never thought of it that way, or oh, I didn't realize I did this. So if we're looking at it from every angle, we eliminate the blind spots as we go into the confrontation with the individual, just to make it more smoothly in the transition. Fourth would be the self-analysis phase. This is an important one. This is where we examine the reality of our intention. Either we have good intentions, that we understand the problem and we keep it on the problem, or we have bad intentions. So for instance, let's just say we have some baggage from the past that's unresolved, and deep down we're a little bit angry, and somebody makes a mistake. Now we can come and we can think, okay, now I have an opportunity to really unleash on a person. Not so much for what they just did, but for everything in the past that you have stored up. Now you have a justified reason to come across somebody and to unload on them in a way that is aggressive. It's overbearing. It's too much. It's not just about the problem. It's actually about your problem. And you're taking this opportunity now, or this vulnerability now, to project on an individual a lot of pain that you have held up inside of you that you now are going to inflict on somebody because now there's an opportunity for it. And I don't think we realize how many times we do this, where if somebody reminds you of somebody else, or the circumstance that happened may have happened similar to you in the past, and you have this built up resentment. Now you have this opportunity. So we have to analyze our hearts. Are we setting aside any personal bias? Are we allowing the person to speak for themselves, and are we in control of ourselves where we're keeping the problem itself in focus? And we're not drifting off, or we're not remembering back to past experiences that may influence you in the confrontation, which create more problems than necessary. And the fifth one, I think this is very relevant in our culture today. It's the fear phase, overcoming your hesitancy to confront. So fear of confrontation due to the other person's reaction. We don't want backlash. We don't want other people to think less of us. We don't want people to think that we're judgmental or harsh. So we hold back because we're in fear of what other people might think. That's one side. The other side is people who actually enjoy confrontation in the sense that it gives them a sense of power, gives them a sense of control. If they are confronting somebody, they can elevate themselves above that person and be in an authoritative position. So these are the two extremes you want to avoid. The fear of confrontation because we're afraid of what other people think. But then at the same time, the pride or the enjoyment of confrontation where we get to elevate ourselves above somebody else and make it more about yourself. And lastly, the sixth phase is the application phase. To do it. To tell them why we're sitting down and we're talking about the problem. The purpose is for healing. The purpose is for restoration. The purpose is to flush everything out so the problem can be resolved, so it doesn't come up again in the future. It's not about bringing division. It's not about empowering or oppressing or scolding and belittling somebody, but it's actually for your good and the church's good, the good of the whole. So make it more about the problem and make it less about the person, or make it less personal as you go through and do it.
Yeah, what you're saying reminds me of the proverb that it says that the man who controls his own spirit is stronger than a man who takes his city.
Right.
And when you're thinking about all of this, it's these steps. I think that the biggest challenge is your own spirit or your own emotions in this. Right. I think the human psyche has this idea that once you let yourself go and you start raising your voice, you're showing strength. But what you're showing really is you're showing weakness. The explosive person is a weak person because he can't control his own spirit. And the person who is calm and seeks to construct is actually the strong person, even though outwardly he doesn't appear that strength. One last question to add. For our viewers, how do we practically grow in this? Is this something that you just, like right now, they've watched the video, from now on, the rest of their life, they're going to have perfect confrontation? Or
no, that's not going to happen at all. This is something that we have to, so the first step here in listening to this video, if it's for the first time, is to create awareness of how you handle yourself in these situations, to create awareness of what triggers you, to create an awareness of where you are strong and where you are weak in this confrontational area. And a lot of times you're going to handle this well, and there's other times where you're just going to fail. But the important thing is to remember the failures. Either write them down in a log somewhere or in a book where you know nobody's going to see it. Write down the date, the time, and like a quick synopsis of the circumstance and how I messed up, how I was not in control of my spirit, and how I let my emotions or my past or my anger at the moment dictate myself in the confrontation. Made it way worse than we should have. We have to remember these times because they can slip by over time, and we can repeat the problem the same way. And if we're repeating the problem, we're not growing. So it has to be documented somehow, either in your memory or written down, and making conscious efforts every time you come into a confrontational situation that you got to be in control of your spirit, like the proverb you quoted just said.
Thank you. Well, that's some great practical wisdom. Thank you so much. This was Ben. My name is Paul. We thank you so much for joining us today at the Pilgrim's Well. We look forward to seeing you next time at another episode of Practical Wisdom. Ben, thank you so much.
Thank you.